Hello, Essex County College family. Welcome to episode 3 of the Essex County College Staff Spotlight. We like to highlight all the wonderful folks who work at our institution. And today we have with us the ranking member of the Short Last Names Club at Essex County College, Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Jeff Lee. Dr. Lee, how are you?
Good. How are we doing?
All right, not too bad. Thanks for joining us today, sir. So we just wanted to get your entire Essex County College profile and let our students know about all the awesome things that you do for them here.
Okay.
Want to start off by asking you, what were you doing before you came to Essex County College?
Okay, before I came to Essex County College, I was doing clinical genetics research on special license from New York State in Yonkers. This would have been in the early 90s.
That, I was not expecting that. That is unbelievable. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
At the time, to do clinical genetics testing required special license. And there was a company that was a startup in Yonkers that was doing testing into certain genetic diseases, Tay-Sachs, Fragile X, and a few others. And we were using the beginnings of PCR analysis, polymerase chain reaction, to do testing to determine whether or not a certain trait or a certain set of traits was linked in certain families. And we worked in addition to, with scientists, we worked with clinicians, we worked with sociologists, we worked with a few psychologists, and were able to explain to families what the probabilities were of certain conditions occurring in their newborns based on their genetic profiles. Because a lot of the law around that at the time was still uncertain to do the work required to special license.
Wow. That is unbelievable, man. Jeez. All right. Who or what brought you to Essex County College?
Oh, that's easy. That would be Byron Johnson. Basically, while the place where I was working was doing this testing, they were also working on another project, which was to find a way in pregnant women to find fetal cells in circulation. There are always a few fetal cells that will escape the placenta and move around in circulation. So if there was a way to do a blood draw and find the fetal cells, it would be a much easier way to judge and test the health of the newborn than the current standard procedure of the time. There were several companies working on it in addition to mine, and the others are making better progress. And so my company looked like it was going to fold. So I noticed there was an ad in the paper for a teaching position at a community college about 3 miles from where I grew up in East Orange. So on my 3-hour commute home, I stopped off one day, interviewed, and initially did not accept the acceptance to come and work at the college. And then that night, Byron Johnson, who was a biology professor, now retired, called me at home and asked me to reconsider and said, quote, "Please reconsider, we need you." So I talked to my family, thought about it. It would be a drastic shift from where I thought I would be going almost 30 years ago, but decided to come back. And my mentor at the time, who became my mentor, was Larry Pitts, who was head of the department, wasn't too happy, thought I was arrogant, which I was, and accepted anyway. Zach Yamba was president and felt, well, he'll want to do research, not teach. And I said, well, I've done research for the last 15 years or so, if you count grad school, and it's time to do something new. He said, okay. And 20 odd years later, I'm still here.
Wow. We're happy to have you. I know our students are too. So what year did you come to ECC, and what department did you begin working here?
That would have been, I believe, 93. It was then the Division of Biology and Chemistry. Physics was off with mathematics. Of the people I started with, Frank DeRoy, Jose Chestnut, Willie Asobayeri were still here. At the time, Professor Lynn Wilson and Dahar Bourtab were also working. They were working in the lab at the time. And it was interesting in my interview when they asked if I could teach anatomy and physiology, because the big push was at that time for nursing. They needed A&P teachers. And I said, well, I've done physiology. I haven't done a lot of anatomy. And Larry Pitts said, just stay a week ahead of the students, you'll do fine. Okay. So for the first semester, I stayed a week ahead of the students, did okay, and gradually began to learn. I was able to sit in other classes with the senior professors and just watch and observe how they taught. And they came to my class and observed and gave very good notes on things. And the funny thing, my first year evaluation, at the end of the first year as a non-tenure, you have to do a self-evaluation. And what I noticed is I spent very little time in office hours and talking to students going over material from class, what a chemical is or how a certain neuron functions. Most of it was personal. They brought all of their personal concerns. And over time, also working with Professor Kathy Battle, who's one of our counselors, learned how to bring the counseling aspect in when you're teaching, particularly at a community college, and particularly right now. One of the things that's noticed is the big impact that teachers have on their students is not so much the academics, it's the life issues. Dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the social change, dealing with having elder care and child care and all these other issues weighing in. And a lot of those come out, if not in group, in the individual one-on-ones in the classroom and in office hours. So I had to learn not just how to teach, but also how to counsel. And that was very eye-opening.
So you came here for science and you wound up getting a little bit of personal science as well. And a lot of our students came to you to speak about non-academic things. So I'm guessing that may have helped you transition into future positions at the college, like where you're at now. Where did you move to after that last position?
Well, I started off as faculty, and then when I got tenure, they made me, I basically got a stipend to be, I'll say assistant chair. I forget what the actual position was, but it gave me time to learn how to be chair. So at that point, Professor Pitts would give me certain assignments or things to do so I could learn how to be a chair. And then around 2000, 2001, I became chair, and I was chair for about three and a half years, and then went back to teaching. And then when the transitions occurred in the mid, I guess it'd be the mid 10, so 2014, 2015, when the VP Academic Affairs position came open, one of the faculty had suggested I apply for it. I didn't know it was even open. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I may not have been the preferred candidate of the group, but I was one that was chosen. And excuse me, that's led to a whole nother aspect of being able to lead from behind, in that now instead of a division, it's an entire institution. It's all the academics. And trying to get things set. There were certain issues at the time we were going through with middle states in terms of policies and procedures not being followed and other problems. So the first thing was getting that set and straight, which we did. And then the next part, which we're sort of working on now, is getting set for the future, which was, we had some things actually lined up to do this year, and then of course COVID happened. But even with that, we're looking towards the future in terms of, we've gotten some wonderful demographic data in the last year from Institutional Effectiveness and John Rumsfeld. And what it's showing is our students are older. They're not primarily straight out of high school anymore, though we do have that population, have jobs, have multiple responsibilities, and are basically looking at getting the education they need, whether it's credit, non-credit, a course, a certificate, to get a job or to get a better paying job. So we, while still doing the courses in terms of transfer and graduation and going on to further academics, we're putting more emphasis and more power behind really life and job transition, because people come in wanting to transition their lives. And that was true before 4 months ago. And after, as we are now, in the midst of this pandemic, it looks like we will be there even more as we move forward into 2021, with people needing retraining. And we've already looked at the demographics. We have an idea of what the current high demand areas will be, and working with the academic deans and the chairs and faculty and others have already put some things in place. So as that wave of people comes in looking for these opportunities, we're able to serve them.
All right, students, so as you can see, Dr. Lee is one of our most versatile and quick to adapt individuals that we have on this campus working for you. Dr. Lee, on our website, it says that you are the Vice President of Academic Affairs / CAO. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you serve our students as VP and what a CAO is?
Okay, I'll back to front. CAO is Chief Academic Officer, and that title can be given to anybody. It can be given to a vice president, to a dean, to a provost. It just came with my title when I came into the position. The big issue for me coming in, and what I still try to do, is to get the academic areas, in this case, the credit and non-credit, the things they need to do their jobs. Sometimes it's difficult, particularly in the midst of fiscal exigency, in the midst of everything else, but the push has always been, what do you need to do your job? I'll try my best to make it happen, and trying to keep some of the policy and other parts of governance that they don't really need to deal with away from. One of the mentors I had was the late Vicki Grosso, who was a nursing professor and also was dean when I was chair. And she always said, if I modify her language a little bit, part of her job was act as an umbrella to keep the stuff that fell from other areas from affecting academic affairs. And she was very good at that. There were certain procedures you have to follow, reports that have to go in. It's basically paper pushing, not an issue. I'll bring in people to help and assist, but I put a lot of that on myself, maybe too much, so that the faculty can worry about being faculty, the chairs can worry about being chairs, and most importantly, the students can worry about being students.
All right, so we're learning today, Essex County College family, that Dr. Lee's brain is probably the size of a hot air balloon, and it is filled with all different kinds of knowledge that we had no idea was in there. I'll tell you a little secret. The first time that I ever even saw Dr. Lee was on the West Essex campus, and I saw him admiring the magazine stand that I have filled with comic books, and it was at that point that I knew that he was a secret nerd. Now, nerds come in all shapes, sizes, and forms, and other nerds can smell another nerd from a mile away. Even when we're not at Comic-Con, we can still smell the nerds. So my question to you, Dr. Lee, is what is your favorite aspect of nerdom? What are you a nerd for? What are your most prized, most cherished aspects of the culture? What do you love?
Two aspects. One aspect is it has become a positive word for your generation. My generation was a negative word. And it is interesting how in languages, many of the words that when I was coming up in the 60s and 70s that were negative connotations have been owned by people to become positive, and nerd is a definite one. And I'm glad to see things such as Comic-Cons and other events where people get together and just enjoy each other's company and the like. Another thing I've been most prized, I guess, if I had to say one, my wife, who's a currently chemical engineer at ExxonMobil, we met when we were in undergrads, and she lived in libraries and still does. And one of her favorite books at the time was called Tomorrow's Children. It was a collection of short stories by different science fiction authors. It was written somewhere in the early 60s, I believe, and she never had a copy of it. Well, in the 80s, I researched and found that it was never put into print as a for sale book, it was only a library book. So I was able to actually write to a company at the time that would do searches and said, please find this book for me. And I remember they found the book and they were just apologetic that we found it, but it's a library edition, I know. But it's got a library mark, I know. There's no cover, that's okay. Some of the pages, it's okay. I need this book. This is the book that when she was reading helped to transform her life. It's one of the books that got her interested in science. And, you know, I was like, I had to have this for her in her collection. And so it would have to be that.
Don't ever get in a nerd in love's way, because he is unstoppable and will do anything for his nerd lover.
So true.
So, this quick question for you, sir.
Mhm.
Marvel or DC?
I'd have to say, with the current aspect, not the 60s aspect, but the current aspect, DC, only because it's a little darker. The Marvel Universe, everything seems to work out. I've always been more of a DC guy. Spider-Man was a broody teen. This one had issues with this. Batman has his own problems. Superman's an immigrant. You know, they're all carrying baggage. And that was the sort of thing I looked to more. But I'm still waiting. Speaking of nerd, that would also include my 20-something kids. And I'm still waiting for the crossover. I'm still waiting for the trailer where Scarlett Johansson goes walking down the street in character as Black Widow, passes a very tall brunette, stops, and turns, and is called Cadet. DC Marvel, I don't know, Super Friends meet, X-Men 2022, something, because it's got to happen. It's just got to happen.
Answered like a true professional. I have never been prouder. This is amazing. And I know our students are right there with you. I am also a humongous DC fan, and especially now, as opposed to, the golden and silver ages, DC has a much more colorful and realistic approach to storytelling than I think other companies do.
I guess another way briefly to put it, when I see Marvel, it's great, it's wonderful, it's nice. When I see X-Men, DC, particularly when I saw the last one with, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and
Justice League.
Flash. Yes. When I look at Justice League, I see our students. When I'm walking through the hallways, I guess the other one, if I could pull in somebody from the Marvel universe and get them over to DC, it would be Ms. Marvel. Because my wife has been on that one since it first came out. She's got the first edition. She's got 3 first editions, I think. But that storyline could not be written by somebody, but someone who didn't know. And I'm keep looking at it. And I told her when she got it, those are our students. Young woman, background, Jersey City. She's probably over at school with us because she's not going to Hudson. I know that person. That's, if I could pull one from Marvel to DC, that'd be her, maybe lighten things up a bit. But yeah, I look at DC, I look at Justice League, I see our students.
That is unbelievable. And Ms. Marvel is a great pick, especially. Oh, my God.
Yes, it is. It is. After seeing what's been written in the past, to see a storyline like that shows that is progress. That is a wonderful storyline.
My last question for you today, sir, is what is the best piece of advice that you have for our current Essex County College students?
The best piece of advice I could give, and I'll be serious now, I'll take off the glasses. The best piece of advice I could give came from a former college basketball coach named Jim Valvano, who's now since died of cancer. He coached North Carolina State University to a championship in the early 80s when I was in North Carolina State in graduate school. And I was there in the midst of all that happened when a college wins a national championship. Sadly, very soon after that, he had died of cancer. Before he died, he gave a speech at the ESPY Awards, which if you look on YouTube, is very easy to find. And he said 7 words in the midst of his speech. He just said, "Don't give up. Don't ever give up." And when I look at our students and where they've come from and how they have succeeded and what they've had to go through, I see the same thing. This happens, that happens, other things happen. They continue, they don't give up. And even with all this going on now, the same thing. Don't give up, don't ever give up.
Epic words from a Vice President of Academic Affairs at Essex County College, Dr. Jeff Lee. Dr. Lee, we want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Students, we hope you learned a lot. We hope you have come to understand how important of a role this man plays in our institution. We thank you for tuning in today, and we hope to see you next time. Until then, stay safe. Take care.